Hey everybody, this is Ghouls here. I'm excited to bring to you a deck profile video on Eggmill. So today I'm just going to talk a little bit about the list and kind of talk about the strategy and what makes this deck extremely strong. So the general strategy of this deck is to use Executor to shut off the opponent's supporters. You use Vileplume to shut off their items, and then you use Tool Jammer to shut off their tools, as well as double Turbo Energy to stop yourself from doing damage. And at this point, you are able to trap something active with a high retreat and just stick it into the active spot and make sure that they can never retreat. And we're going to deck them out and mill them out. So that's the general core strategy. And we're going to talk about how we actually do that, how we get there. And yeah, there's a few other routes that we can take with the deck as well. But overall, I would definitely classify this as the most oppressive deck in the format. And in my opinion, it's the best deck in the format for sure. So I actually just won the Async League Season 5 with it. And I'm super proud of it, and the deck is extremely strong. It's not a deck to play if you are just trying to make friends. But anyway, yeah, so let's go through the list, and again, we'll go through everything in a little bit more detail. So first off, for Pokemon, we have the Executor line. So this is just an incredible line. The blockade attack does 10 damage and it prevents the opponent from playing supporter cards. And then the execute is also absolutely incredible. The propagation ability lets us get it back from the discard pile. And so what this allows us to do is use it as, a way to save resources as we are using some of our more powerful trainer cards that we'll go over. But it also helps recover the execute underneath item lock significantly easier too. So we got the Executor line. Then we also play Venomoth as another form of way to slow the opponent down. So it item locks and then confuses for one grass energy specifically and does 30 damage. And then the Venonat is also extremely strong. It has a Radar Eyes attack, which lets you look at the top 7 cards of your deck and fish out whatever card you want out of there. So just another early game consistency option, which we're all about basics that have multiple roles. All right. Next we play Vileplume. Vileplume is my favorite Pokemon, so this deck kind of came to be because I wanted to make a Vileplume deck, and it's my first ever deck I played back in 2011. But anyway, so Vileplume has this awesome ability that says each player can't play any item cards. So where this is important is it's going to be shutting off opponents' escape ropes, switch cards, things like scoop up net, etc. The other super important thing to note about this is the Irresistible Aroma ability on the Gloom. So this card is absolutely insane. Once during our turn, we can flip a coin. If the opponent doesn't have a full bench, we can look at their hand if we flip heads and put a basic onto their bench. So you'll see a lot of opponents will try to play around benching too many Pokemon that you can trap active, and Gloom just sits there and just says, sorry, Doug, we're going to go ahead and get there anyway. It's really strong, the fact that we can use this ability once a turn. In this deck, you don't want to just get the Vileplume out super fast. Vileplume's really there for some mid to late game trapping or just pressure. There's different matchups that it also can come down early. It's important for, but for the most part, you want to be using Gloom's ability to fill Pokemon into play. There's luck involved with flipping heads and then also that they have the Pokemon. But if you're just sitting there, locking them over and over again, slowing the game down, you'll have time to be able to use that effectively. And then we use the Shiny Oddish just strictly for the bling. There's an Oddish that has a draw attack that's, it's a better attack, but the 60 HP is pretty relevant because like Muscle Band plus like a 30 damage attack comes up kind of frequently. So we want to try to, keep our Oddish alive. All right, so next we have, in my opinion, probably one of the most important cards of the deck, and probably the hardest card to use in the deck too, is Roserade. So with the La Parfume ability, it lets us search our deck for any one card. So this is huge. So it is a setup card sometimes, and it is also a let me find the missing piece I need card. I will very frequently use La Parfume early on to actually search out some form of disruption. Like if I have Executor active, excuse me, or Venomoth active attacking, sometimes what can just straight up set you ahead while playing this deck is looking for that important like energy disruption card, or searching your deck for an important stadium, which we'll go over later. And then also, what's kind of cool is that we can use its attack too in this deck. And it has some niche uses, but like when playing this deck, it's extremely, extremely important to know every single out that you have at every moment, because sometimes you can paralyze the opponent in some key spots if you're in a bad spot. And then we also have the Soothing Scent attack, Roselia. All right, up next we have Sawsbuck. So Sawsbuck is our help at the end to kind of consistently create this supporter loop, which we'll go over. A lot of people see Sawsbuck and they're just like, oh, like I need to get this up because this is our draw card. Now, while it is our draw card, this should not be looked at as a means for us to be able to play the game. This card is strictly there as a means to really create the loop at the end. And yes, Seasonal Blessing does help us throughout the game. And you'll find, like, as we go over the other cards that we have for thinning, the Seasonal Blessing becomes way better as the game goes on. Helps us see our outs. But this is not like a role of a card like Octillery and Water or Zebstrika. You do not need to rush getting this thing out. Because this deck is not a normal... It shouldn't be played as like a normal GLC deck where you're like, let me just set up my board real quick and get Executor out and get Vileplume out and start attacking. That's not how you play the deck, because that on its own is not strong enough to be able to shut every deck out in every situation. You can win games that way, but anyway, it's to get us to be able to draw the loop at the end. And then Find a Friend is an incredible attack for a colorless energy too, which is really cool. Again, we love the compression of having basics with great attacks. All right, next we have Rabsca. Rabsca, I have a love-hate relationship with this card. First off, this card is busted. It's absolutely broken. It has the ability, it's a Spherical Shield, so it is a like bench barrier on steroids. It's not as strong as Machoke, but it's really, really good. Again, we also are playing the Reller with the draw card attack. We just want to be able to play the game, so that's why we play these Pokemon that have let us play the game attacks. Now, the cool thing about Rabsca too is it actually is a pretty relevant attacker in the deck. You'll find in some matchups where you just, you aren't at the bottom yet, you don't have like a full lock set up, but the opponent has a threat on board. Psychic is a very strong attack, and a lot of times people don't even see it coming either. So it does 10 plus 30 for each energy attached to the defending Pokemon. Again, another counterplay to this deck that people will try to do is they will not bench a lot of Pokemon, and they'll just put a lot of energy on like 1 or 2 Pokemon to prevent like the energy disruption and denial. And you don't care about that at all, because if they have too much energy, or even with the math of Venomoth or an early Executor, it sets up very nicely for Psychic knockouts. So that's something to keep in mind when you're playing the deck. But this card is huge right now in the meta. You have Raging Bolt, you have some decks are playing Kyurem. Let's see what else. There's just a lot of Snipe. Hitmoon Bros, Psychic Spread, all that stuff. It just gets completely shut down. And the cool thing is, like, effects of attacks cover so many different bases too. So like, say TM Devo doesn't work on your bench whenever you have Rapskin play. So there's just a lot of really good uses. Also Lightning Spread, that's another one too. All right, so next we have the boss himself, the probably agreed upon best grass card in all of GLC. So we use the Sun-Drenched Shell as a way to like fish out our Pokemon. Nothing new with grass. And then we have Torterra. There's nothing I need to say about Torterra that hasn't been said before. Extremely strong card. Now this deck can play like a few different concepts. So we were talking about the lock strategy earlier, but one of the cool things is this deck can just go big boss mode and just say, hey, I've got a big Torterra up active and I have a cape on him. And with the Vileplume in play, it prevents them from playing their field blowers. And so Torterra, once he gets a cape on him, he is very hard to deal with. That combined with being item locked since, turn 2 most games, that leaves the opponent's board state at not the strongest point to be able to answer Torterra. And so you can put the pressure on them, and a lot of times you just win games flat out from Torterra. And the other cool thing about Torterra is, with its role with Executor, is you push forward the Torterra and start taking knockouts. It, number one, can kill cards that give you issues. Like, you have to look at Torterra through that lens. So, like, say against Rain Dance, you probably want to kill Baxcalibur with the Torterra, because they can just, like, attach energies more than one a turn and just kind of be able to get out of, whatever kind of trap you're setting up. So you use it as a means to kill the things that give you issues. But also, when you're pushing forward the Torterra early, your opponent's going to have to bench other Pokemon that they don't want to. And then that leaves us into the perfect opportunity to bring up Executor and trap it active. So this card has so much value in this deck. It's insane. And we can also just, if it gets knocked out, and depending on the matchup, like I'd say Water is a really good example of a matchup that you just need Torterra in. That we can just get it right back with all of our recovery cards. So that's the Pokemon line, right? And also important to note, the Sun-Drenched Shell ability, we want to be using that every single turn to be thinning our deck out constantly. So when we do use Sawsbuck, we're optimizing our draws as much as possible. You'll find that this deck does not play a lot of like draw supporter cards. So you have to be constantly thinning your deck out. And we do that partially with the Sun-Drenched Shell ability. And you don't, also as a side note, you don't always have to attack with Torterra either. A lot of times, like, you can just have it sitting in the back, but if things aren't going great with your opponent, then I would just suggest winning with the Executor, and not opening yourself up for any kind of, like, trickery to come back. Like, Hex Maniac is always active whenever you're attacking with Torterra. Anyway, this is a very strong card, but also like you have to be cautious when you use it. Something to keep in mind. All right, next to the trainer cards. So we play Rare Candy. That card is obviously really strong to get Vileplume out when we absolutely need it. We play Tag Call. Tag Call is, excuse me, essentially what this whole engine is built around. We want to be using Guzma turn 1 every game. And so when you Roserade, a lot of times if you're trying to set up, you need to Roserade specifically for Tag Calls so you can get Guzma and Cynthia Caitlin. And that way, like, you set yourself up for, like, the rest of the game. But anyway, yeah, this card is absolutely broken. Okay, next we have our other, like, kind of consistency item card, which is Trainer's Mail. Again, it just lets us see cards, which is huge. All right, now we have Pokemon Search. So we play Evo Soda, Evolution Incense, Poffin. And then we are also playing the different ball searches. So we have Nest Ball, Net Ball, Ultra Ball, and Level Ball. Again, it's just setup cards. Up next, we have our recovery items. So we are playing Revitalizer, Rescue Stretcher, and VS Seeker. Now, I know we're playing Vileplume, but the cool thing is, like I mentioned earlier, we're not trying to rush Vileplume in play. And so we really want VS Seeker to be able to reuse, you know, our extremely powerful supporter cards. Sometimes we want to hold off even going into Vileplume in certain matchups until we have used our VS Seeker, because that's how important it is to, like, reuse certain supporter cards. But yeah, the Revitalizer, Rescue Stretcher, it's for whenever we're, you know, early, don't have the plume in play. All right, up next we have our tool cards. All right, so tool cards, we have Technical Machine Evolution, Luxurious Cape, Tool Jammer, and Float Zone. These cards are crazy. Like, they're so strong. I talked a little bit about the Luxcape with the Torterra. Again, the cool thing is when we have Vileplume in play, or if we're attacking with the Venomoth, they cannot get rid of that. Unless if they're playing Faba. But if we have Executor in play and Vileplume in play, they cannot get rid of the tools unless if it's like through a attack or something like that. Which I think like Purloin, off the top of my head, has a tool remove attack that you have to be careful of. But anyway, okay, so Tool Jammer is huge. Tool Jammer is like what makes the deck absolutely filthy in my opinion. So with the Executor up, like their float stones aren't relevant. Their any retreat tools aren't relevant. They can't TM Evo search for evolutions if you've got an early lockup. The Luxcape doesn't matter damage wise. So most of the time we do want to be using Tool Jammer on the Executor for the ends like board state, but also like you can use Tool Jammer early, like if you absolutely need to. I've used it plenty of times to like shut off HP boosting tools, to prevent the opponent from just retreating after I take a knockout, to prevent TM Devo plays. Anyway, it's just, this card is so strong. And then, of course, Floatstone to give us free retreat. All right, next we're going to round out with our stadiums. So we have Pokemon League Headquarters, Artisan, and Turffield. Again, we are a Guzma engine, so these cards are super crucial for setup. It's partially what makes the deck so consistent. And then Headquarters is huge. Headquarters, you know, I've gone through all kind of different routes when it comes to what should be my disruption supporters. Like there's Galarmine, there's a few things that we can play, but Headquarters is what it's the best option. There are so many basic Pokemon that attack, and it plays a few different roles here. So like I mentioned earlier that we want to trap something active and force them to have to manually attach to retreat, and we play Energy Denial. This card early makes the opponent, combined with Venomoth's Confusion attack, makes the opponent where they have to attach more energy than what they need to early on. And so it's a long game concept where we have to be trying to force the opponent in bad spots. Whether or not it's like effective in that moment, we have to be using these resources to destroy their resources, to get rid of them. In the long haul, say if the opponent has the extra energy bump early on, and it just gets, it feels irrelevant in that moment. It's not, because it's going to come up later on when we're, say like it's against Psychic and we have a Malamar stuck in the active spot and they don't have any more energies to attach to it. This card is absolutely insane. It makes a lot of matchups winnable. It also slows down aggressive decks, which we can struggle with, or control struggles with. I think Eggmill does really well into them. All right, supporters. So we have our disruption supporters here. We have our Energy Denial / Tool. The Faba is really cool because it's like redundancy. With Tool Jammer, we can always Faba and then gust something up that had a float stone. If people think our Tool Jammer is gone. And then Plumeria and Flare Grunt are just also the best Energy Denial that we have. We talked about using Execute to save resources. We can use the Plumeria to, discard the Execute, and that way we don't have to discard 2 cards from hand. And then Rocket's Handiwork. This is what we're going to use to try to speed up the process at the end. You do not want to be using Rocket's Handiwork in the middle of the game. Obviously, there's situations that you can do it, but you don't want to just like rush the Vileplume into play, rush the Executor in play, and then start using Handiwork. That's not how you're going to be able to win. So that's our energy disruption there. Next, we have Lieutenant Surge, which is absolutely just filthy. It's such a good card. It lets us, if we're down in prizes, play 2 supporters besides Surge, so 3 total. And we will be behind on prizes a lot of the time. All right, so next we have our recovery supporters. So we have Yell Cheer, and we're going to talk about the loop in just a second. But so you have Yell Cheer, Cynthia Caitlin, Lusamine, and Lana's Aid. I was playing Clara for a while, but Lana's Aid ended up being just a little bit better. Lusamine lets us constantly get back headquarters / whatever supporters we need. Yell Cheer is really interesting too, because people just kind of look at it as a supporter recovery card, but it's important to remember that this card also gets back Pokemon. It's very, very, very good. And then Cynthia Caitlin, we actually, like I said, Tag Call, we want to use this. We're looking more for disruption cards early on, and so being able to recover that while drawing a card or drawing 3 cards is huge. So we'll go over the supporter loop in just a bit. All right, we've got some prize cards right here. This is very important to play both of these. This deck can really, 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 really struggle with prizes because a lot of times you aren't doing damage in every single piece to the puzzle. To have the loop going can just, if it's prize, it can really screw you over. So anyway, we play both of those. All right, next we have some consistency cards. These are kind of like our early setup supporters. Arven, grabbing Buddy Poffin, and then TM Evo is absolutely filthy. I mean, there's all kind of uses for these 2 cards. Again, Guzma Hala just literally sets up your board. It lets you get your Artisan. It lets you get your Capture Energy. It lets you get the the tool that you need for that moment. If you need to get your TM Evo to like evolve everything, or if you need to get Tool Jammer, like it's there. It's the best card. I think it's one of the best cards in GLC, but it's what makes this deck function. Again, the whole engine is built around being able to do this. And we talked about thinning. This card is like the best card at thinning for you. It just lets you grab so much, and then if your stadium sticks, then you're thinning even more with like Turf Field or Artisan. This is all super important for you being able to get there. Next, we have our draw supporters. We have Disruption and Iono, and then just like consistency with Cynthia. It's just a great unconditional supporter. I've tried a bunch of different things over it, but I keep on going back to Cynthia. And then Iono is huge. There's so many games that I've won just from repeatedly using Iono over and over and over again. And then for our last like disruption supporters, we have Boss and Guzma. Since we only run Float Zone, Guzma is important for the switching out too. But we want our best odds at being able to hit the gust on something when we need to. All right, and then the last thing that we have is our energy count. So we're playing 2 basic grass and aromatic energy. Aromatic is super strong. There's so many decks that are going to want to try to like slow you down, like with, you know, whatever like little status effect that their guy has. Anyway, it's good. 2 grass lets us see it off of the net ball. Then we play these. The reversal energy is discussing with Torterra. It's just really strong to be able to attack with Torterra out of nowhere. And then the capture energy, again, consistent setup card. And then the main thing here too is double turbo energy. This is what is one of the main important pieces. You'll find if you create the loop, and if somehow you manage to discard the double turbo energy, your life becomes a lot more difficult because eventually you'll knock out whatever's stuck in the active. Again, the double turbo just says, sorry, they're stuck here for the rest of the game. All right, so last thing I want to talk about is like the important board state of like what that looks like. So we want to have Vileplume. I guess I'll do it like this. Vileplume active. Where's he at? Executor. Double turbo. And then we want the Tool Jammer one. Headquarters. Okay, there we go. Sorry. All right, so this is in general what you want your board to look like at the very end. And then you're going to have the Saul's book. And we'll talk about the loop real quick. So the game plan is you're going to trap something active. If you have headquarters, that's like added bonus. It makes it where they'll eventually run out of stadium cards, and that will stick. So we're going to talk about the loop. At the very end, you'll probably get to the end of your deck and not be able to... you'll basically run out of cards in your deck, which is great. That's where we want to be. So what the loop is going to do, and I'll just do it with Rocket's Handiwork, but you probably want to be looping Energy Denial at some point, but this is the very last step, so we'll just go ahead and do that. So in an ideal situation, you have the this board state, okay? Executor active, double turbo, no damage being done, they can't retreat, blockading, so they have no access to any supporters. They cannot play Mallow and Lana to switch, they cannot play Guzma, they cannot play Blacksmith to get energy accelerated. I mean, absolutely nothing. So at this board state, they can only attach energies and attack. They can attach tools, but it does absolutely nothing. So, all right, this is our board state. The supporter loop is going to be this. So say in an ideal world, this is cards in our hand. And you know, we'll have a massive hand at the end, but we have no cards left in deck. So the order that we do when we get to this last stage, so we're gonna go ahead and play for the very first turn of this loop. When we hit no cards in deck, we play Surge. Okay, that lets us hit 2 extra supporter cards. We're going to play Rocket's Handiwork. After Rocket's Handiwork, then we go ahead and play Team Yelchier. And then, just for the sake of the conversation, we can say that the Cynthia Caitlin is in our discard pile. So we Yelchier these cards back as our third supporter. So then we shuffle our deck. Okay. And then we attack with Blockade. The next turn, we draw a card. Okay, say it's Rocket's Handiwork. Then we're going to use the Saw's Buck to draw an extra card. Okay. Boom. Cynthia Caitlin. At this point, I can use Cynthia and Caitlin to get back Yelchier. Goes to hand. This goes to my discard pile. Then the next, I Blockade, and then it's my opponent's turn. The next turn, they, pass because we've got them in a really bad spot. We draw for our turn. It's the Surge. So then we just rinse and repeat. We play Surge, and then we play our Disruption card. Again, this could be in place of, it could be in place of, Flare Grunt or whatever we need to be knocking energies off every other turn. And after we do that, then we play the Yelchier. And then we shuffle back these 3. Okay. And then rinse and repeat. Straight up, that goes to the discard pile. And then the next turn, we draw a card. It's Rockets. Then we can Saw's Buck for our second turn, which is Cynthia Caitlin. We can either play Lusamine or Cynthia Caitlin back for Yelchier. Play Yelchier during our second phase. Next turn, we draw a card. And we just rinse and repeat. Surge. Rockets. Yelchier. Shuffle these 3. And that's the loop. So once they get stuck in the active spot, that's what we're going to keep on doing. And we're also going to keep on doing that, again, when we are trying to deny them energy. But that is the general concept of the deck. It is extremely, extremely strong, but the deck is very hard to pilot. So if you pick it up and you're just like, what in the world is going on? Don't be discouraged. It just takes a lot of practice. You have to know your matchups. You have to know what the expected energy count is in different decks, / what kind of outs do they have. Are they playing cards like Jet Energy to be able to get to out of the spot? Are they playing cards like Hiding Energy that lets them just free retreat off of an attachment? These are all cards that we have to be super aware of, and you can argue that you probably shouldn't even create the loop until those cards are dealt with. So anyway, there's a lot of things that go into piloting this deck. It really can beat any single deck. There are some tough things that you don't want to see. Like evolution decks that have like 1 energy attackers can be a little tricky. But for the most part, this deck it's really, really strong. Current record with it right now is 32-7 in tournament play / async play. And I promise the deck functions. It just has a little bit of a learning curve to it. But this is the beloved Egg Mill, and I hope y'all enjoy. Let me know what y'all think about it.